So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Quinn.
Thank you, Desiree. Hi, my name is Quantina Martine, and I've been with Audubon for almost a year. And my role here is the Water Resource Associate. And I just want to say thanks for joining this last webinar of our series. And a little bit about myself. I was born and raised here in New Mexico. I am of the Diné tribe here in New Mexico, and I actually grew up in a small town in Rema here in New Mexico. So as I said, as Desiree said, this is the last of the series, but you can still check out these really amazing videos that we all did. And so you can actually see these at our YouTube website. And so Amy will drop that in the chat box. So there's some videos up there that you can look at from some of the previous videos that we've done. So I will be talking about a project that I have been working on for the last several months and part of this webinar. And the name of my webinar is Bird Habitat Within the Isleta Reach on the Rio Grande. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the river. And Paul gave an extensive webinar for this particular, his is the introduction to the Rio Grande, and you can see that on the YouTube page, and Amy will drop a link to that. So the Rio Grande overview that I'll be talking about is that the river starts in Colorado in the Rocky Mountains, and it meanders its way down to the Gulf of Mexico. It's about 1,900 miles, and peak flows happen in May from the snow melts of the Colorado. And there are several dams within this reach, and these dams are located at various points along the river. And so as the river makes its journey from Colorado to the Gulf of Mexico, it's being used for agriculture and for cities along the river and small towns that are within the reach of the river. So it's used by its purpose is for a lot of different farm fields, and we use it here in the city. And so more recently though, there's a lot of drying that's happening in the river. So yeah, so there's it's this amazing river, and so that's a quick overview of the river here. So so the area that I'm working in is called the Middle Rio Grande, and this stretch is about 200 miles. It stretches from the Cochiti Reservoir all the way down to Elephant Butte. As you can see from this photograph here, the red star marks where Albuquerque is. And so within this reach, you'll find cities like Albuquerque, Berlin, Las Lunas, and Socorro, and also there's several wildlife refuges like Savieta and Bosque del Apache within this reach. So what makes the Rio Grande so special? It's the bosque. So some of you probably use this area if you live within anywhere near a river. You probably do a lot of hiking, you do a lot of biking, and some of us probably do birding within this reach. And so the bosque has tons of cottonwood and willow along that run parallel to the river. And this is really great habitat for a variety of bird and fish species like the endangered Rio Grande Silvery Minnow and the Southwestern Willow Flycatcher. And there's also a variety of other wildlife like beavers, muskrats, elk, cougars, and bears that use this reach. And so more recently, like bears, we've actually seen bears south of Berlin, and we've even seen cougar tracks down in their area as we've done this project. And so another really great feature of the bosque is that during high flow years, a lot of overbanking occurs, and it creates these really cool wetland areas that a lot of wetland bird species use. So it's really great. As you can see from this photograph here, that was taken a few months ago, and you can really see what the bosque looks like when there's water in the river. So it's got tons of bird species and tons of a lot of other mammals that use that area. So as I mentioned, the Rio Grande Silvery Minnow, it uses the river as a home, and before the Silvery Minnow used to use the whole stretch of the river as its home, and now due to lack of water due to human impact. It's really just been condensed to a small stretch in the middle Rio Grande, and then even smaller within the Isleta Reach. So this is one of the fish that use the habitat, and this fish has been on the endangered species list since 1994. And so this is one of the species that we have been working to create habitat for within this reach. So here is a photograph of my partner, Sophia Torres. Her and I did a collection a few months ago. And so this is a spoonful of eggs from the minnow. And so we actually gathered these eggs spoonful by spoonful, and we actually counted all these eggs. And to the picture to the right shows everybody helping out and collecting these eggs. And it was a lot of work, but we managed to collect close to 100,000 eggs, and those eggs were sent to facilities here in New Mexico, and where they will be raised and then be reintroduced back into the river. And here's the Southwestern Willow Flycatcher. And so this is a bird species that part of the project I'm working on is to create a habitat for and to just research this bird a little bit more. And so it's this really small little bird, and it uses the reach as a home, and create nests, and to just it's really this bird has been found here within the reach. And so this is as I said, the willow flycatcher, and to the right is a photograph by Amy, our avian biologist. And this bird has been on the endangered species list since 1995. And so this bird here, you can see it's got grayish green wings. It's got a whitish throat, has light gray olive breasts, and a pale yellowish belly. So if you want to know more information about this particular bird, Amy did a really cool presentation on it, and you can also find that at our YouTube page. So like I said, the photograph to the right is a picture that Amy took a few weeks ago, and she said that it's her award-winning photo for Audubon. So she's been doing bird swivel surveys for us this year. So what is an outfall? And so, like I said, within the bosque, there's these really great places that you can go birding, you can hike, and then there's these areas where the water returns back to the river to keep the river wet. And so an outfall basically returns irrigation water from ag fields and farm fields back to the river. And there's several of these within this Middle Rio Grande reach. And so this is a picture of the Los Chavez Outfall. As you can see, if you look north, there's look at the vegetation that has this really cool cottonwoods, and then it meanders back to the river. This photograph was taken a few weeks ago when the river went dry. As you can see, even though the river is dry, there's plenty of water in the outfall, which supports bird species and fish species. So, like I said, these within the Middle Rio Grande, it's divided into 4 reaches, and it extends from Cochiti Lake all the way down to Elephant Butte. The photograph on your left is Cochiti Reach, which starts from the Cochiti Reservoir, and it extends to Agostoria. And within there, if you can take a look there in the black, that's all the areas where there's outfalls, and these outfalls return water back to the river. And then the Agostoria, which is also the Albuquerque Reach, there's plenty of outfalls that return water back to the river. And here is the Isleta Reach and Santa Casia Reach. And the Isleta Reach is where I am actually doing the project. And within that reach, there are quite a few outfalls. And we took 6 outfalls from there to do our study in. In the Santa Casia Reach, as you can see, there's Bosque del Apache Wildlife Refuge located on the lower end there. And there are fewer outfalls within this reach because there's not a lot of water to return back to the river within that area. So as I mentioned, the project, its main purpose was to look at habitat characteristics for the 2 main species, which is the Southwestern Willow Flycatcher and the Rio Grande Silvery Minnow. And we took a look at 6 of these outfalls. We chose them based on where they are within the reach. There are 2 in the upper, 2 in the middle, and 2 in the lower part of the reach. And so with this, we definitely looked at the characteristics. We looked at what happens during dry years like this year. We know we didn't have a lot of snow melt this year, so we wanted to see what is thriving there at these outfalls. What does the bird species look like? What happens when the river goes dry, you know, and we keep water in these outfalls? How far does the outfall reach? You know, how much does at 4 CFS, how far downstream does the river go? You know, like, and are the Rio Grande Silvery Minnow using these outfalls as a refuge during, you know, years when we don't have a lot of water? And so we took a look at the characteristics at 6 of these different outfalls, and you know, it's been several months that we've been collecting data, and you know, it was a lot of work to a huge stretch of the river to take a look at and collect data. But you know, we were able to get this done, and here I am talking to you guys about it. So it's a really great project, and be happy and to continue working on these outfalls and, you know, continuing to collect really good data for these different types of species. So here we are collecting field work, collecting data out in the field. And so that's Amy. She is our avian biologist, and she is collecting data, looking at vegetation, looking at tree canopy, looking at the understory. What does that tree shrub look like? You know, is there cottonwoods? You know, we're looking at even on the ground, what does wetland ground species look like? What does the vegetation there look like? And so that's some of the data we collected. And then you have in the middle picture there, we have Paul Tashin, our director for freshwater conservation, and he's there doing a cross section. And so that data is also important to tell us, you know, the depth of the each of these drains, these outfalls, and how much water is going through there. And you know, there's really great information that comes with collecting this type of data. And then to the right is we have our other employee, Sally, and then one of our interns, and so Rachel. And so they're, you know, we started this collection back in December of last year, and you know, we've been out there almost every few weeks to continue to collect this data. So other stuff that we collected is soil texture. As you can see Paul there, we've definitely put him to work. And so we also, because soil texture is also important for, you know, learning about what is going to grow there and what type of, you know, soils are within these drains. And also he's there doing the flow measurement for us. And then in the main channel is where the drain reaches, where it goes back into the river. That was also another area that we looked at. In this photograph, as you look downstream, there's a woody debris, and that's actually a really good habitat for fish. And then there's tons of willow there, and so all of that put together, you know, we took a look at to see what the habitat will look like for these different species, and also it would tell us what we need to do for future restoration work if that needs to be done. And here is Los Chavez Outfall, one of the ones in the upper reach of within the Isleta reach. And this one here, as you can see to the map on the left, is the pink dots indicate where swiffle were seen in 2015. And in that map there's, you know, they were seen there, and that was about 5 years ago. And that's our assessment area. And as you can see, there's a developed sandbar in there, and the drain meets back the river, goes back to the river there. So those are some of the stuff that we're looking at too, like previous data. What is the swiffle doing? What is where is it using that area as a habitat? You know, do we need to do some improvement there? And the photograph on your right is called Langeman Gate, and it's controlled by the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District. And that gate actually is automated, and so they actually can control how much water is put into these drains. And you know, for this particular one, it runs about 4 cubic feet per second, and you know, at a low rate like that, it's enough to keep the river or the drain wet, and enough to create habitat for the different bird species. So this is the Chavez Outfall. As I said before, this is a really cool outfall, and one of the ones that I really like because it's got this like, it's got like the tree canopy, the cottonwoods, and it also has a willow, and then it meanders back to the river, and it's got really great habitat for different bird species for this one. And with this one, we were able, when we were out there collecting data, we were able to see some really great birds, and one of the ones was the Baltic kingfisher here to your right, and cute little guy. And so we definitely saw quite a few of those there, and I'm sure that they're using this outfall for fish because that's their main diet. And so you'll definitely see a lot of these birds, and you can go for, if you ever want to go for a walk there, there's a place that you can park, and you can you just as long as you just are there birding, and it's a really great, nice and peaceful outfall. And so this is the other birds that we saw there, and we partnered with Hawks Aloft, and so they were able to do some bird surveys for us, and see, these are some of the birds that they saw there: the killdeer, the indigo bunting, the white-breasted nuthatch, the ruby-crowned kinglet, and the sandhill crane. And so one of the favorites out of this is the ruby-crowned kinglet. And so Amy and I, we were collecting data. That was one of the ones that we tried to take a photograph of, and I swear that every image that we took was pretty blurry. So, but that was one of the ones that I really like seeing there. And so Amy will be dropping information for these birds in the chat box if you want to know a little bit more about them. So moving further south, this is the New Berlin Outfall. And so here is another really great one. There's no infrastructure to bring water to this one as of yet, but I think it's a plan for in the future that they will be bringing water to this one. And as you can see, this one was taken back in, I think this was in December or early January, and you can see that, you can definitely differentiate between the cottonwoods and the willow in this photograph. And so some of the bird species there are the northern flicker and the black-headed grosbeak. I think for this one, there were up to 20 species from the bird survey that was done by Hawks Aloft. In the previous one for Los Chavez, there was up to 28 species of birds. So these outfalls are definitely being used for a variety of bird species. So, and then we move further south to Lower Peralta, number 2. As you can see for this one, this was a photograph taken a few weeks ago, and this one is still wet. And one of the cool things about this is that it's probably coming from groundwater. We don't know yet, but it's something that we want to research a little bit more. And within this reach, everything tends to stay a little bit wet and longer. And here with this reach, you could see we saw a few bald eagles, and then the western wood pewee is another cool little bird that we saw there. And just looking at this photograph here, you definitely can see the variety of vegetation, all the cottonwood there along the river, and then you can see like the young willows within the river there, and in the vegetated sandbars there. And then you can also see Russian olive. Those were that's along where the jetty jacks used to be. So this one definitely is really another really cool one that I liked. And then we have Story Outfall, which is even further south than Lower Peralta. And so here, as you can see, there's a little bit of meander, and it's coming back into the river. This also was an area that was continued to stay wet during this dry season. Not a whole lot of water, but it's still wet, and it still provides habitat and water for these different bird species and different fish species also. And within this one, you can see this developed sandbar also with a little bit of a side channel there, and that's a lot of willow and some cottonwoods in the background. Really great habitat. Another one that, during bird survey, I think they were able to see a Southwestern Willow Flycatcher at this particular outfall. So in here we have the summer tanager and the spotted towhee. And then for further south, as we continue further south, this is the Sabreno Outfall. And for this one, this was taken back in January also, when there were any leaves on the trees. But this is one where it's pretty long, it's pretty narrow, it runs almost a mile long. And so this particular outfall just it cranks, it puts water back into the river. And but there's also there could be potential for this particular outfall as far as like restoration work and things that can be done. Maybe can be meandered, maybe we can get water onto the left there, and maybe that's really great bird habitat. And like I said earlier this year, a few weeks ago actually, Amy did bird surveys for us for the Southwestern Willow Flycatcher, and she actually did spot a few of them. And from that picture that I showed you previously, that's from one of her bird surveys. And I was out there with her a few weeks ago, and we were able to see quite a few green heron. And that's another bird that we saw there. So this one definitely is further south, has potential. And, I feel like every one of these outfalls has potential. And so we can definitely do quite a bit for each one. So one of the issues, or one of the things that I saw, part of this project, that I felt like couldn't be ignored, is the amount of garbage within the bosque. And it breaks my heart to see, so much garbage, and how, it's being used, and how it's being misused. And, we have all these really great bird species, and then our impact, we tend to leave garbage behind, or, there's a fire recently there that happened. The fire was near the Chavez Outfall. And, when I saw that, when I went back out there a few weeks ago and I saw this, it just was like, wow, but the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District has closed off these, their
Hey everyone, it looks like we might have, yep, it looks like we just lost Quinn. So what we're gonna do is just have her slide, someone else is just gonna pull up her slides, and then Quinn's gonna try to reconnect, and if she can't, she was just gonna call in on the phone, so we'll be able to continue the conversation. So thanks so much for your patience. Apologies about that, and we're just gonna get her back pretty soon. So thanks for your patience. All right, everyone. Thanks for your patience again. I think I have a proposal. We're having some trouble pulling up the slide because all of us are having internet connectivity issues. So I think it might be nice for us just to go ahead and go into Q&A. We have some of our amazing water team on the line right now. And so if you have any questions about the presentation, outfall work, or the Rio Grande generally, we can start answering those questions. Hopefully that feels good for you and we get lots of good questions in.
Can you guys hear me?
We're back, Desiree. Hello?
And so basically we just are going to go into the Q&A session. If you don't mind, is it going to be challenging for you to pull up your slides, or just wondering what's the easiest for you?
I think I don't have that many more slides left, so can you start the video again?
Yeah, so you'll just want to share your screen, and I'll make sure you have permissions to do that. And we'll get rolling again. And thanks for those who put questions in the chat. We'll get started on those once we finish up the rest of the presentation. So yeah, technology does what it wants, but we're adaptable. So thanks for hanging with us.
You're back on.
Hey, we're back. Sorry about that. Technology. So where was I? I was talking about garbage within the bosque and how we can do better. So like I was saying, like this, these irrigation ditches, it returns back to the river. And so when you see like all this garbage in there, and that's not a good thing, because we're impacting the different bird and fish species when we put all this garbage in these outfalls. So yeah, so let's do better and have less of an impact on the habitat for these different species. So back to the drying of the river. Like I said, this year has been a really bad year for water within the river. We didn't have a lot of snow packed this past winter, so that really impacted the amount of water that we can have within the river. And so what water we do have is actually going to the farm fields. It's actually being used so that they can grow their crops. And so that really does impact these different bird species like this egret and the wood duck that depend on this water. And so one of the really cool things that Audubon is doing is that we are leasing water, and that's how we actually are keeping some of these drains, some of these outfalls wet. And so when Audubon leases water, they're able to put water back into several of these outfalls so that we can keep it wet, and we can keep the bird and the fish species thriving within this area. And so we actually were able to at least put water into 3 different outfalls within this reach. And we have water, I think, until the end of the month, but at least it's helping, and every little bit helps during a dry year like this. So like I said, we are doing everything we can to keep water in the river. And we also we definitely need water this year, and hopefully everything will be better if it starts raining. We definitely need some rain. And so this is a photograph of Los Chavez, and this was taken a few weeks ago. So what is great habitat for bird species within the Middle Rio Grande, the Isleta Reach? And this photograph can kind of tell you everything about what is optimal habitat for these species. You have really great overstory. You got like these old cottonwoods. You have really great understory, which is these willows. And then you have like these, and then you have water. That's probably the most important thing, is having water within the river. So keeping everything wet provides great habitat for these different species. And so, you know, having these drying events definitely impacts these the bird species that use the bosque as home. And so in order to get to have great habitat like this, we have to partner with different organizations. And then having these collaboration with these different partners, we're able to come up with really great ideas like the leasing program. And we're also able to talk to farmers and, you know, how maybe they can hold back on growing a certain crop, you know, and so all of this working together as a whole, I think that we can create this really amazing habitat, and we can also keep the river wet during dry years like this year. And you know, this isn't the only year that the river goes dry. You know, even on a good year, you know, the river does dry out up near Las Chavez. So having this really great habitat allows species to thrive and allows bird species to come through and make homes and, you know, raise their young within this really incredible bosque that we have here in New Mexico. So as I said, we have these really great partners that we work with, and one of the ones is the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District, and we've been partnering with them for this project, and they've been really great to work with. And then we have the Bureau of Reclamation. They've done some bird surveys for us this year. We also deal with the policy side of stuff, and so we work with the Audubon Center. We work with, you know, the Fish and Wildlife Foundation, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We also work with local organizations like the Isleta Reef Stewardship Association. We work with the Interstate Stream Commission, SWCA. SWCA does the fish surveys for these outfalls. And then like really great groups like Hawks Aloft, where they are doing the bird surveys for us. And, you know, all of this, you know, is, it costs money, you know, and we a lot of this stuff is done through grants. And we also recently have Bonneville Environmental Foundation helping us to keep water in the river at these different outfalls. So all of these organizations working together is helping to keep these 2 endangered species going, but also to help benefit all the other different bird species that are there within this reach. So like I said, the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District has a conservation program, and they have this, you know, they want to make sure that the river stays healthy and that, you know, the ecosystem stays healthy, and, you know, that they can try to help, especially low dry years like this. And, you know, they have this triangle here where it's like, you know, agriculture production, you know, all of that, the ecosystem health and species conservation, water management, Rio Grande Compact compliance. So having all of this, they were able to have this conservation program. And if you want to know more about their program, you can actually go to their website. Amy will drop that in the chat box, so that way you can, you know, maybe help support them and, you know, learn a little bit more of some of the really great things that they're doing. We also have the Isleta Reach Stewardship Association, IRSA, and that's citizen based. They're funded through the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation through the Water Smart program. And they basically help develop concept for restoration for this reach, which is the Isleta Reach, and they also understand the importance of the Rio Grande within this area. And so that you can also learn more about them on Facebook at their Facebook page. And so Amy will put that in the chat box. And then there's also, you can take a survey. They have a little survey that you can take. It's about 5 minutes long. And if you live within this reach, you can take this survey. And it's a really quick survey. It basically asks you how you are using the bosque and what improvements you would like to see. And based on all the survey, you know, they're able to come up with plans for the future as to what needs to be done. And, you know, this is community based. And so, you know, one of the things is they want to make sure that your voice is heard and make sure that, you know, you have a seat at the table and you're able to help make decisions as to what happens within this reach. So really great program that just started. So what are we going to do, you know, as far as like for the future? For this project, you know, you know, have been working on this project for the last several months, and I feel like I've invested quite a bit of my time into it, and I've become quite attached to these outfalls, and you know, I think that each one is very unique, very different, and right now we're holding workshops as to, with all the data collected, and we're going to see what we can do with that data collected, and as far as the different outfalls that we have out there, like what type of restoration can be done. And, you know, like from something like Los Chavez, maybe, you know, it doesn't need a whole lot, to like an outfall like Sabreno. And so based on, you know, the data that we collected, we can decide like what type of restoration or rehabilitation work needs to happen at these different outfalls to provide great habitat for, you know, for the bird and also for the minnow and then all other bird species. And so an ongoing stuff that I will be doing, since, you know, I have my drone pilot's license, is to continue monitoring these outfalls, and especially during this drought season, and, you know, continue to take photographs, continue to, you know, see what's happening as everything changes. And one of the things I also was thinking is that we do a trash pickup. You know, Audubon has a really great team, and I think that we can get together and, you know, go out to these outfalls and do a trash pickup day. And also pole planting, that's something maybe in the future that we can do at some of these sites. And some of the stuff that you can do at home is, you know, birding. You can visit the bosque, you can do some birding, of course, you know, as long as you social distance. Then you can also go to the Vida Oro website, and they have some really great things that are going on there too. And then if you are more interested in the policy side of stuff, you can look at Judy's webinar, and that's in the YouTube page. And so that's another really great source of information. And the next part of this that I want to do, or I will be working on, is creating a story map within this reach. And so it'll be like an interactive story map where you can see what is happening at each of these outfalls, and the type of work that's being done there. And you know, since it's a map that is going to be updated, so you can actually see the ongoing stuff that's happening at these outfalls. And also more bird surveys. You know, we definitely need to include more bird surveys. And, you know, some of the stuff that we did was done by Amy, our avian biologist. And so she did the swivel survey for us. And then we also had Hoxoloff do some surveys for us too. And so, you know, the only way that we can continue to do some of these bird surveys is also by your donation. And so I really feel like we need to do more bird surveys at these outfalls to see what is happening. And, you know, there's, you know, like I said, there's, each one is different, and each one provides different habitat characteristics for the different birds that use it. So that's, in the future, that's what we'll be doing. And then another thing that we talked about is maybe doing a bird walk with our biologist, avian biologist, Amy. And so she's always up for birding. And so I think that that's something that we can arrange, and we can probably do, you know, probably in the next few months or so. So thank you for attending my webinar. And, you know, this is, sorry for the technical difficulty there, for the glitch, but yeah, we're just having some issues here. But like I said, thanks again for joining me this afternoon and letting me talk to you about this really amazing project that I'm working on. And, you know, I'm going to continue working on this project, and I'm going to continue to try to make, you know, these outfalls and a better habitat for these different bird species. And yeah, and like I said, and if you donate, you know, that really helps too. And if you participate in some of the future activities, that was also pretty, you know, like the trash pickup, and, you know, even just visiting an outfall and seeing like the amazing habitat. And, you know, if you go early in the morning, that's a great place to go and just take a walk along one of these outfalls, and you'll be amazed at the number of bird species that you will see there. So Once again, my name is Quantina Martine, and thanks for joining the webinar. And so if you have any questions, drop them in the chat box, and I'll be happy to answer some of your questions. Thank you. Do we have any questions, Amy?
Yeah, can you hear me? I'm
Yes.
trying to get my video going. Yeah, that was great, Quinn. Super informative, and we got actually quite a few questions in the chat box. Some of the water questions Paul has kind of been answering as people ask them, but I'll ask you a few questions that came up in the chat box. So there's a couple, so those of us that work in the water world kind of use these terms that maybe you aren't familiar with if you're not working on the Rio Grande. So we had a question, what is overbanking? And then someone else asked, what is pole planting? So if you could just define what those mean and what that means for birds too.
So what I meant by overbanking is that when there's a lot of water in a river that comes through, and sometimes they flood over where the river would normally run, and so they would like go onto like the vegetation, and they would flood the areas within the riparian areas of the river. So this is the water. There's a lot of water, and it just like flows over the normal bank. Does that make sense? And then what was the other question?
What is pole planting?
Oh, pole planting is like taking willows that's collected during the winter, and they're usually about 10 feet long, and they dig really big holes in like willow or cottonwoods, and so they're basically just put them in the ground, cover them up, and so take these willow poles and just plant them in the ground. And so we've done a few of those, like at Isleta Wildlife Refuge, and you know, it's a lot of work. It's a team effort, and I believe that Audubon was part of some pole planting earlier this year, or was it last year? Yeah, so that's just planting trees.
Cool. Thanks, Quinn. So we had a number of questions about how to figure out where these outfalls are. Are they accessible to the public? Is there a map or a place that shows where we can get to these? So, I mean, they are really cool birding hotspots. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the accessibility of the outfalls and how someone can get information on outfalls near to them, and how to access some of those, and if they are open to the public or not.
So most of my work was within the Isleta Reach, which is south of Isleta Pueblo, and so you just got to understand, like, you know, make sure not to go onto their property. But as of right now, you can park on the levee roads near the bosque, and you can actually take a walk as long as you don't drive your vehicle, you know, onto the levee roads, and because that's managed by the Middle Rio Grande Conservancy District. But if you just, you know, park your car close to the levee road and take a walk to the river, you'll actually be able to get to some of these really great habitats. As far as a map for the outfalls, I don't think there's one publicly, but I created several maps, and this is part of the storyboard that I was talking about, which I'm hoping to come out with later this fall. And having the storyboard, you'll be able to actually see where the locations of these outfalls are and how to assess them and how to get to them. And, you know, that's, like I said, something to look forward to this coming fall. And yeah, sorry, we don't really have a map to give out. But if you really want to know, you can probably email me, and you know, we can figure something out. Or like I said, that maybe we can do a bird survey in the future that Amy can lead, and we can, you know, all go out there and give a tour. And I think actually we might be doing one with MRGCD here in a few months, or maybe in a few weeks. So that's something that they're also working on. And you know, just go to our Audubon website and look under events, and so, you know, you should be able to see the upcoming events, and maybe that will be one of the ones that we'll have up there.
Cool, thanks. So we have a couple of questions about other wildlife you're likely to see around the outfalls, not just birds. So Janice asked, could I possibly see bobcats at the outfalls? And then Thomas wants to know if there's any dangerous snakes that we need to be aware of, or other poisonous creatures that you might encounter when you're out there.
Right now it's summer season, and so I would be careful of snakes, rattlesnakes in particular. Amy and I were out several weeks ago, and we were actually walking to the bosque, and we came across a really huge diamondback. Was it a diamondback? I think it was a diamondback rattlesnake. And so you got to be careful of rattlesnakes, within the area. And also, as far as other bobcats, it's possible, because we did see cougar tracks, we did see bear tracks, and one of the other things that Amy and I were thinking of doing was putting up a game camera to see what other wildlife are at these outfalls. So, like I said, some of this stuff will probably come out in the storyboard, and then also you can look at the Audubon website. We'll probably post images there too if we do put up a game camera to see what other mammals use these outfalls. So, but also be careful. If you do see bear track or cougar tracks, that you should probably have bear spray with you, and always have someone with you.
Good point. Yeah, I mean they're managed systems, but it's pretty wild out there in some of them. So yeah, be careful when you're out there. So Catherine wants to know, and a couple other people asked similar questions about, is Audubon or MRGCD doing any habitat restoration projects at the outfall, or have they done any restoration work in the past, or like kind of what are we doing as a partnership with MRGCD to improve the habitat at the outfalls?
Right now, since I'm doing this project is pretty new, and we are actually doing some workshops to discuss these future restoration work and restoration rehabilitation work at these outfalls. And that's something that we are working on right now. And in the past, there has been restoration work done throughout the reach. And there's always an organization doing something within this reach. But as far as Audubon and the district, we are working together. So probably maybe next year we'll start to do some groundwork for some of these outfalls.
Cool. Well, that's, I think, all the questions I have in the chat box. I'm not sure if maybe there are some more questions on the Facebook Live, but I'm just manning the Zoom chat. So I think I'll leave it there and say thank you, Quinn, for your great presentation, and thank you everybody for attending and asking some really great questions.
Yeah, thank you everybody. Sorry for the glitch.